Hello? Hello? Oh, thank God you're alive. I need you to stay calm. We're going to get you help. We'll get you out of there. I want you to find a place to hide. Someplace safe where you can remember the taste of her kiss when you felt her neck break, you diseased cocksucker.
So I finished playing Outlast 2 yesterday and was very disappointed. The first moments of the game seemed so promising, and then as the game progressed, my opinion of it got worse and worse, and at some point it was an actual chore to finish the game. I was bored, I was annoyed, and it was just absolutely not working out for me. But okay, let's do this the way I always do it and start with the negatives, which are here a lot more than the positives. And one of the first things that I personally don't like, and this will be different from person to person, some people might actually enjoy this, were the cheap jump scares. Now, let me make this clear. There are two types of jump scares, really. There are the cheap ones and there are the more traditional ones. And I'm going to be making a lot of analogies to Resident Evil 7 here simply because this is the last good horror game that used all these tropes but used them mostly well. And one of the first well, not cheap, but one of the first jump scares in Resident Evil 7 was when the body, you're crossing a cellar that's basically underwater and just your head's popping out, and at some point a head kind of a body rest appears above the water. The sound of the game becomes a bit louder, but not much more, like just to elevate the way you're seeing things, but it was not a cheap one. Now what makes a jump scare cheap is when the game suddenly becomes extremely loud and something moves very fast and continues moving. Usually it's like an enemy or something that needs to be a real threat. That's a cheap jump scare. The good jump scare is slightly louder because it needs to be at some point, otherwise it's not gonna create this shock feeling and scare you, get you out of your comfort zone, but it's not too loud. When it's too loud, it's like it's trying way too hard. And it's somewhat fair in the sense that this happens without having any negative repercussions for you, like in Resident Evil again, where this body just floats up and that's it, there's no danger. While in this game, usually this stuff happens in a situation where there's an enemy and the enemy then will try to attack you or even kill you, which sucks because that means that not only did they use the cheapest trick in the book, but they actually killed you doing this. So this is something I don't like. Now, it's a horror game, it's supposed to scare you, but I do not enjoy it when a game tries to scare me so desperately that it goes into the cheapest, stupidest trick in the book. And again, maybe you've seen this online. There are enough pranks like that where they give you to do some mundane task and suddenly the screen changes to a screaming face, becomes extremely loud, and that will scare you because of the nature of the thing. But that is a cheap jump scare, and that's used for pranks, for example. If you want to make a game, you have to make the game better so that I feel scared by the atmosphere, by everything that's going around. And this game has mostly failed in that aspect. I'll get in more detail about it, but it relies mostly on these things to scare you and less on creating a subtle atmosphere. Mostly because you can't see shit. You're just walking around trying to figure out what's going on. It's so goddamn dark, and if it's too dark, it's not scary. In real life, it would be scary because not being able to see around you leaves you vulnerable, and you're scared of that. In real life, you want control, but in a game, it feels like the developers are hiding the fact that they didn't do a good job, that they didn't want you to look around too much. That's how I perceive it, at least. And if we move to the second point that I want to make, is that there are many scripted illogical moments where your location immediately becomes known to the enemy. So for some reason you walk around and everything's cool, and then suddenly some enemies, because there's stealth in this game, and the stealth is very bad to begin with. But the enemies sometimes just know where you are for no reason. They straight out come to you. They might not come to you in an aggressive manner. They look like they're patrolling, but suddenly they turn around. I'm in the grass, in a tall. There's a lot of, for example, cornfields. There are several cornfields in the game, and the zone is fairly large. The chances of them actually stumbling on me are extremely low. However, I replayed this several times, and every time it felt like the enemies actually knew where I was. They were all, zeroing in on me, and they shouldn't even know I was there to begin with, according to, how the game developed until that moment. But they always knew where I was. So after several failed tries to do this the stealth way, I actually went on and just rushed through it. And that worked. I didn't have to deal with them. Yeah, they were chasing me, but I managed to run away from them. And so that is something that, if you're gonna give me stealth, make it work. Make it work properly. Oftentimes you have these hiding spots, you jump inside a hiding spot, even when not seen by an enemy, they find you. They find you two out of 4 times, 50% of the time when they didn't see you. Okay, they're chasing you and they're fairly close, but they are around the corner. They never. Okay, some of you are gonna say this is logical. Yes, I know it is logical, but in the game should actually have rules that apply strictly. And I'm looking at this from an Outlast perspective from the previous 2 games which I have played, and I enjoyed it more, by the way, than this game, a lot more. And while I was absolutely fed up with the whole setting of the madhouse, I was really looking forward to this hillbilly place and stuff because it reminded me of Resident Evil, and that's something that I enjoyed. So why the hell not? But the problem here was, like I said, that the rules in this game seem to be A, inconsistent, and B, not consistent with previous Outlast games. While the first and the second Outlast game were actually very consistent in their rules. They had pretty much the same gameplay with the same way of work, and the enemies there were more interesting. You met a lot more interesting boss-ish characters that were like crazy and doing stuff that is absolutely nuts. But they were interesting. While these ones here are all boring and feel like a generic zombie game with super zombies, if you will. They're not zombies, but they feel a lot that way. But okay, let's move on again. So I did mention that it's too dark, but I didn't explain it. It is way too dark. It's so dark, as a matter of fact, that most of the time you are not going to be able to see anything. If you don't hold your camera on night vision, you're blind as a bat to begin with. If you do that, you still won't see everything. Sometimes there's a small light source, which when you pull down your camera, does not illuminate enough for you to be able to tell what's going on, but when you use your camera, blinds you. So you're blinded no matter what you do. And using the camera when running makes you run slower. Also, it confuses, and it's just really not a good thing. And it's just too dark. There are cutscenes where stuff is happening. One of the first cutscenes where they abduct your wife, you can't tell what's going on. At least I can't. I definitely had no idea what was going on. All I heard was screams and shouting and kind of fighting sounds. But this was the state with many of the cutscenes. It's just confusing. In multiple cutscenes, there's a torture cutscene where you're hiding in a confessional booth and you're looking through a mesh, and of course you can barely see what's going on outside because that's a theme in this game. They don't really want to show you much. Transitioning to the school levels often happens with complete darkness, and at some point I thought it's like a cinematic, and I waited for maybe 15 seconds for something to happen. The game was just quiet and dark, and I think what's going on, and suddenly I press and I hear that my character actually moves. I hear noises. And I'm like, hell, I was supposed to be playing here, and then I pulled out the camera and moved. So it was so black that I thought it was a fade to black, and I was waiting for something to happen, like cinematic or something, but there was nothing. That's how used you're gonna get to the darkness in the game, and how much you assume that darkness is ever present, and it's going to be a veil that will cover up the game. And it's sad because the few times when it's not too dark for you to be able to see, it looks interesting. The game does look kind of nice at these times, but most of the time it doesn't. And another thing that I really despise in the game is that there are so many chase sequences with low to no orientation. The game is very linear, so you're not gonna be given much of a chance to explore, etc. While at first it seems that way because you need to find batteries and bandages, that's not really the case. However, the problem is that you get these arenas oftentimes with a very small exit where you need to squeeze under something, and you're gonna be so confused because it's so dark, you can't see, everything looks the same. You're running in circles, and when you're being chased, you can't concentrate on the environment and on figuring out how to deal with this problem where the exit is. You're just running, and hope that you stumble upon something. And I did this with too many times, and just these chase sequences are 80% of the game. I'm not even exaggerating. No matter whether it's the school levels or the normal levels, this is what you're gonna be doing. You're not Sneaking is almost never an option because usually the levels have too many enemies. You have no effective way of distracting them whatsoever. So at some point, you have to either wait for the longest time for some enemies to pass, and that will not always work. Sometimes enemies will still see you even though they're not facing you, and it just doesn't work. So you end up in a chase sequence. This is what happens. And this happens all the time. And it's done so badly that you reach checkpoints as you run from somebody. I ran and I entered the house because there was nothing else to do, and I closed the door, I locked it, and the guys broke in, of course, killed me, but that was a checkpoint, this house. So as I started again, I found myself in the same house, this time not chased by anyone. Now I can hardly imagine that the developers here wanted me to actually run in the house, get killed, just to respawn in there and then be calm. I don't know if I did something wrong. I honestly doubt it. It could be that I don't know. But my point is that, this is not how it should work to begin with. There shouldn't be so much chasing. And later on, there are a few segments where when you get chased, something like the wall crumbles and stuff, and the enemies block on the other side. So they created some barriers, but in this particular instance, they didn't. And these chase sequences are too long, too annoying, and since your character, and that's the worst part, has a fatigue situation, so he gets exhausted as he runs, and suddenly barely moves. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm way past my time when I was doing professional sports, etc. I'm not gonna go into too much detail about my past, but let's just say that I used to be very athletic. Not as much now, I haven't been doing sport that much. I just do it recreationally now. But so from my perspective, even when you feel like you've got no energy anymore, if someone was chasing me for my life, I just don't feel like I would straight out stop, because that's what it feels like. He starts walking slower than when he walks normally. If I have to run for my life, I'm gonna run until I pass out. I'm gonna, because the thing is, I feel as though, and that's maybe just my physical perception, but it feels as though even at my weakest, I'm able to move faster than if I just walk normally. And this guy does it slower. Now, I'm not gonna comment whether this is realistic or not. This is gonna be different for different people. But this guy doesn't seem to be too much out of shape from what I've seen. He has a normal body type, and he doesn't run that much. That's the thing. He doesn't have any weight on him. Just wearing his clothes and having a small camera in the hand. And while that's not optimal, it still seems like to me like he gets exhausted way too fast, and that makes these chase sequences way too frustrating and annoying at times. Most of the time not, but at times yes. So they really should have thought of something else, at least to freshen up the gameplay. This just annoys me too much. And about our main character, he's a pussy. That's the thing that really angers me. He's way too weak. I understand this guy. You're not supposed to be some kind of soldier or fighter. They want you to be scared. They want you to feel hopeless, and they want you to kind of feel like a pussy. But the thing is that he is unnaturally weak and cowardly. Now, he's on the one hand, he's a weakling, but he's motivated to save his wife, which I believe anyone would be, or 99% of people. I can't help but put myself in his position. If I was somewhere like that, someone abducted my girlfriend, I wouldn't just turn around and say, "Well, sucks," and leave. I would attempt to save her, and of course, it would make some kind of sense when you know that there are a lot of crazy idiots, that you should attempt to arm yourself in any way. Anything Sharp would do. These guys are killing each other, and they're attempting to kill you several times. They injure him several times badly. It would make sense that he would at least grab a knife, grab anything really, so that at least, if he doesn't want to proactively attack people, he should at least be able to defend himself when they attack him, because they attack him all the time. And it's just, so, because the game uses so many Deus Ex Machinas, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's essentially when a writer uses a strategy to save the protagonist in a near, hopeless situation. It's like a magical save. So that means, your character is about to die, and suddenly something happens, some explosion shakes the room, and he escapes, stuff like that. It's not particular to this game, my example. I'm intentionally giving just random examples because I don't want to spoil the game to the guys who want to still play it. But, this happens several times in the game where he miraculously manages to escape, where the enemy just, at some point ignores him instead of killing him. There's just too much of that happening, where they're like, oh yeah, kill him and stuff. I want to give one example. It's not too much of a spoil, so you can trust me with that. You forgive me, but it's really minimal. At some point, your character gets caught, and somebody tries to bury him alive. They put him in a coffin. They seem to be, covering the coffin with earth and leaving. And your character you have a quick time event where you push it open, and you realize that it seems like they just sprinkled earth on top of the coffin. it's not even a shallow grave. It's not even a grave. The coffin appears to just have been covered with barely any earth, and they just left. They want him dead. I want to remind you guys. But this is the kind of Deus Ex Machina I'm talking about. They just suddenly the enemy behaves unrealistically so that you can still survive, and that's fine. But again, our character is too weak. Now, the first enemy that you encounter, I believe that's the first enemy actually. If I'm not, well, at least is the first really strong one. Is this crazy woman? And she, throughout the game, now I have actually read about the game now after I beat it because I didn't understand the ending that well. I didn't understand what happened. So in these cases, I actually give the games credit and I say, hey, the writers have thought of a really complex plot and I missed something. I didn't read all the files you find and stuff, so it's never excluded. And this is the case here as well. But the story isn't very intelligent or very interesting, really. It's just convoluted in the end. But now that I understand it, there are many things that just don't make sense. And for example, this character who's a very tall older woman with something like a pickaxe, she's like a superhuman. She's big, she's strong, but she appears to be really skinny and old. So now that I understand the lore, it makes no sense. She is not mutated or something. But I don't want to spoil too much, so I'm not gonna go into detail. Just my point is that it's just a tall old woman, but she kills you easily. Now, I'm gonna forgive that because she looks superhuman and she kind of acts superhuman. So I'm gonna go on a whim and say this woman is some kind of a superhuman. So it makes sense that you cannot defeat her. Okay, but later on, I got killed by guys who are sick and can barely move. One guy killed me one-on-one, and that guy was sick, could barely move, and had only one arm. So this guy can barely stand. I'm not even sure if he can. I tripped. He got on top of me and started strangling me with one arm. And he's looked like he had rabies or something. I don't know. But in any case, his arm had rotted off and fallen off and stuff. So this guy with one arm, old guy with one arm, who's terribly sick and can barely move, kills you. Strangles you with one arm. You are like both your legs and your arms are there and stuff. You're injured at that point, but not that much not to be able to defend yourself. You can still sprint and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So our protagonist is just unnaturally weak to such an extent that it's really frustrating. You think to yourself, why is this? Why is he so weak? At least give me enemies that are supernaturally strong or something. So it justifies the fact that he cannot deal with them. We're being given really weak enemies most of the time, and our guy has no chance against them. And I don't like that, especially the example. There's also another great example, old woman, old grandma, not the large one I mentioned before, but really like a classical tiny grandma. Well, she killed me. She punched me several times and I died. Now, excuse me, but I can hardly imagine a full-grown man in his best years is gonna be taken out by a grandma who just punches him a few times in the face. It just doesn't seem like that's gonna happen. Now, it might just be my perception, but it seems way too extreme, so I'm not happy with that. In any case, so the weakling, we get to be him, and there's nothing we can do about it, but I'm too unhappy. I mean, in the previous Outlast games, we were also a weakling, but we were in an insane asylum for the criminally insane, and essentially what you're dealing is with crazy murderers, crazy prisoners. And these guys were mostly big, muscular, and even the smaller ones were nutcases who had experience with dismantling people and stuff. I mean, the crazy villagers here have that experience too, obviously. There's so much that they've killed. But still, it just doesn't add up. Like I said, the grandmas and grandpas that take you out with punches and just strangle you to death just doesn't work for me. In the insane asylum, that seemed a lot more plausible. The next point that I want to talk about is one that really infuriated me. I played the game on the easiest setting. This game killed me so many fucking times. I'm not even kidding. And this is not just because I suck. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that I sucked at the game. Clearly, if I died many times, I mean, I don't know anyone who's played the game personally yet, so I'm gonna wait and see what my friends say, if they play it, when they play it. But I died a lot of times. Just the first opponent before I found out where I was supposed to go, because it's just a tiny opening in a wall that you need to crawl under. It's really difficult to see, and the bitch is faster than you, because the game does not explain to you that when you hold your camera to see in the dark, you actually run slower. but if you take down the camera, you can barely see anything. So it's essentially impossible. I died probably around 10 times just from that first grandma, super strong grandma. And then many, many more times later until I figured out that the most effective way of dealing with stuff is not trying to be stealthy or hide. It's to straight out rush, sprint past them, hold down your camera, take a look at it, you know, just imagine a path, remember that path, and go through that without the camera, and they can't catch you. So that's how I rushed through most of the difficult segments. And but the game kills you so many times, and at times there are cheap deaths that the game intentionally administers just to. I don't know why, honestly. It thinks it's Dark Souls or something. I don't get it. I mean, there's a part of the game where you run, and suddenly you come to a breakpoint with three corridors, and each has a door, and you get to choose. And guess what? Two of the corridors are. There's an enemy behind them that insta kills you. So it's a trial and error thing. You go and you open the wrong door, you die. You start over from the previous checkpoint. You run, you run, you run. You reach the door, you try the next door, you open. If you're lucky, it's the right one. If you're not, you die. So the game will kill you over and over again. But unlike games like Dark Souls, and I'm sorry for mentioning it again, but in Dark Souls, dying is a learning experience. You rarely are going to be killed cheaply. This is something that happened in Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 1, I think once or twice, but in 3 I don't think it happened, at least I can remember. But essentially what happens is the game teaches you that you did something wrong, you didn't avoid an attack, you need to, you don't know an enemy has an insta-kill move, that you now know about, and that somehow makes sense. It sucks, it still sucks, don't get me wrong, but it makes some sense. This is just, there's a 2 out of 3 chance you will die instantly. That's it. It's random chance. It's not learning. It's nothing. I mean, the only thing you're doing is memorization. You're playing Simon Says. You're just memorizing shit and picking the path according to your memory, which to me is not satisfying. Now, it's going to glorify itself by killing you. It's going to kill you so many fucking times that you're going to be like me probably, and by the end just be bored with it and think, oh, come on, end it already. Put an end to my torture. I did not enjoy it. I honestly didn't enjoy it. I played it through out of pure stubbornness, and I'm glad it's over. I don't think. I mean, I know that the previous Outlast games were not like that for me. I actually was interested. The story got more interesting, and here the story just got more boring. The gameplay got worse for me and extremely repetitive. I didn't like it, and the next thing that basically is something that I already mentioned more or less is the fact that it's too much trial and error. The game wants you to die trying until you figure it out just by a random chance. Several times I was about to go online and open a guide to see where the next step is because I get killed before I can realize where I need to go. It's so annoying. It's just offensive for you to have to try over and over again until you figure something out like that. For me, this was not worth it. So what I did is I just pushed on and I managed to figure it out and get my own results this way without having to actually resort to this bullshit and check solutions to such a simple game. Okay, so the next point is that we have QuickTime events. I don't like them, but at least in the menu you have a setting which allows you to make them impossible to die from, or at least that's how I understand it. Now, I never played without this setting, so I don't know, and also when I saw the QuickTime event prompts, I actually pressed the things, but I think they were forgiving. I think what happened essentially, it describes it as such, is that if it says press W and you press S, you're not going to instantly die because you pressed the wrong button, but you're just going to continue to see the right prompt, and either you're going to die if you do it too slow, which I doubt, or you're just going to have the chance to do it until you do it. I did fairly well in general and fairly fast, so it's hard for me to tell what was what, but I assume still QuickTime events suck for me. Especially there were a few where you need to press your mouse like a dumbass. I hate those and I feel like I'm breaking the mouse. For example, there was one where you just have to hold the button pressed. That's much healthier for my mouse and my nerves, so why not all of them that way? Or at least offer me a chance that they are not like this or non-existent at all. But okay, minor thing because QuickTime events aren't that prevalent in this game, so I'm willing to forgive them. The next point is that the story sucks. Essentially, the story is going to keep you confused to such an extent that at the end you're gonna ask more questions than you started with and feel like you got no answers whatsoever. it is all so crazy, and even the people on the internet who are really good at this, because there are a few guys out there and girls who just really good, who are just really good at analyzing plots like that, and figuring out what happened, and they do explain it. I watched their videos, I listened to it, and they're all very unanimous in what they mean, at least the ones I saw. So when they say what they assume is the situation, you're gonna find yourself mostly nodding and say, yeah, that makes some sense. But again, they're not perfect. They themselves don't really know everything regarding this. So the story is bad, and it's written in such a bad way that even the guys who are really good at this are very uncertain about many things. But they at least understand some, so it managed to get me some clarity, but I'm not satisfied. Now, the next thing is that the voice acting generally in this game, it's not bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not particularly good either. I mean, they didn't sound like they were bad actors, but more like the lines weren't so good, first of all, and they felt a little bit boring to me as well. And it felt almost like the actors themselves are a bit bored. They were not, like, they didn't get a chance to offer their full range. The woman screaming does a good job, obviously, that screams in terror, but that's pretty much it in my book. Next up is that the camera you're carrying. Um, the thing with the camera is that the camera is both a plot extension device and at the same time is a difficulty device. So you get these batteries. Luckily, throughout the whole game, I never ran out of batteries, but I was damn close a few times. And I was trying to save the camera batteries whenever I could and not use it too much. But the camera seems like a limitation. It's always seemed that way, especially because these batteries, they run out in mere 1-2 minutes. It just feels like the camera battery should last very long. But the camera, on the other hand, is fucking badass. I mean, from a pure technical standpoint, I wish I had one of these. It runs on normal AAA batteries, and while it just runs for a few minutes, which really would suck. Uh, it's very convenient for him because he finds normal batteries everywhere that he can insert into his camera. The camera has a killer zoom, killer night vision, killer microphone. It's just a really good camera. So from that point of view, the camera itself is really cool. I liked it. I did not like many of the things related to the camera. One of the things, for example, is that you need to look at certain things for a few seconds, and then you can hear the character say something about what you just filmed and stuff. And that doesn't sound so bad, but then when you realize that you need to look straight at something for up to 15 seconds, that's just too bad. That breaks the action. And sometimes, because I was rushing and some asshole still chasing me, I had to skip this because I didn't have time to stop and wait 15 seconds for the idiot behind me to catch me and kill me. So they should have not done that. It would have been enough just to look at it once and then later on to be able to listen to this. But okay. The next thing is that the checkpoints can be bad at times. You might end up having to replay somewhat lengthier parts. They're not too long, but if you try to stealth something, you have to wait for enemies to pass by and be really careful. This will prolong it and it's going to be really annoying. So that's something that I didn't like. And last but not least, when it comes to negative sides, and I could be talking all day about things I didn't like, but these are the main ones, are the unclear objectives. Now, your character will actually say what he needs to do, and when you look at your camera, it's going to be written with words, but it doesn't really tell me what much when it says, find Lynn, who's your wife. I'm in the middle of nowhere. What was that for an objective, and usually you have to find a way to get inside a barn, and for that you need to push a cart on which you need to climb. Oftentimes these things aren't so obvious, trust me, especially when some morons are chasing you. So, a bit clearer objectives would have really helped, but again, I guess it's supposed to be a horror game, and they want to create pressure from the unknown. They want you to not be sure what you need to do, and therefore be in the situation where you have no idea what to do. You're just running around being chased by morons and about to die any second. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that this is a personal thing, but maybe some people like it. Now that I've gone through the biggest flaws in terms of gameplay, etc., I would actually like to talk about the few things that I did enjoy in this game. First of all, I like the setting. It reminded me of Resident Evil 7. It seems that hillbillies are the new zombies in a way. It's a modern thing to emulate. It's interesting and it's kind of scary because some people really imagine that these guys would be scary and assholes and stuff. Now, I personally know many peasants, know many hillbillies, and I think they're very nice and honest people, and they're more close to nature than us city folk are. And from my perspective, I think they're like the last people you should be taking for a scary game, but it somehow works. It's always interesting. We've seen it several times, and it makes for some entertaining conversation. And because of the many misconceptions about them, this makes for a great basis to give them certain dialogue that would seem more appropriate, if you will. I personally don't think it is, but they often make them extremely racist and xenophobe and stuff like that, and that seems to go well with the whole idea. I think it's totally unfair, although they probably are more like that than us, where everyone is nowadays. But still, my point is that the setting was cool. I thought that the religious thematic was very interesting. Wherever there's religion, there are bound to be really crazy people following it, so that seemed logical. You get to go through a lot of churches and stuff, but the design and everything seemed rather interesting. It was disappointing that they didn't make much of it, but the whole idea of it was really cool, and I like that. Um, as I've said, when you can actually see something, the visuals are really cool. The lighting and everything seems to work well. The character models are not done very well though. The chicks and the enemies and everything just doesn't work for me so well. But maybe someone will like it. For me, it felt a little bit like the engine's full potential was not used. It's not easy to make humanoid characters, so I understand it. And the darkness is used to hide the flaws of these characters, but sometimes they'll get really close, really up in your face, and then you get to see them and they look weird. And sometimes the same character will grab you twice and you get a different perspective, and the character looks completely different from before, which is just weird. But okay, I'm digressing and starting to throw shit at the game again, so I'm gonna go on. Um, as I've said, it reminds me of Resident Evil. I had a great time with that game, so I expected to have a great time with this one. Was not the case, but I did like the fact that they actually inspired themselves for more successful games, because that is a good way to go generally. They failed here, in my personal opinion. They didn't do a good job, but I did appreciate the fact that they at least attempted it. And another thing that I really like, and this was something original that I haven't seen before, I think, in a game, is whenever you fall from somewhere, your glasses fall off and your vision is super blurry. And then you grab your glasses, put them on, and suddenly becomes clear. I personally wear glasses, so I can relate to that. And I thought it was just original. It was something that I don't remember having seen like that in a while. It's used several times throughout the game, and it just reminds you that your character is somebody like that. He's wearing glasses and stuff. It's an interesting way to show you more about your character and tell you more about him without actually ever showing you his face and his physical appearance from a third person perspective. I like these little subtle things. But above that, ultimately, I did not enjoy this game. I think it was a bad game. It was really boring. It was tedious to play through. It annoyed me so much, and this is so rare that I start getting angry at some game. But it killed me so many times in so many stupid and cheap ways that at some point I was like, fuck this game. I don't know if I'm gonna finish it, but I managed to push through. I actually played it through in one sitting, but not because I enjoyed it. Don't go blaming the fact that I did not enjoy the game on that, though, because I've played several games that I really loved in one sitting, so that's not something to be blamed here. I was generally not scared by the game. It managed to catch me off guard a few times with these cheap jump scares, but the whole setting did not scare me. It just failed to impress me. But again, to each his own. If somebody out there disagrees, and I know a lot of people will, because I actually saw online people are praising the game. A guy wrote that this game revived his love for video games, which I absolutely cannot relate to. But there you go. There will be different people, and this will appeal to some people. But then again, there's some guys out there who like fat chicks, so But okay. Anyway, thanks for watching my review, and if you do like this game, please disregard the last part I said. It was more of a joke. I don't think that your taste is worse than mine because you enjoy the game. We just have different tastes, and I appreciate the fact that you watch my video one way or the other, and I hope you will take a look at my other videos as well. Have a great day.